Hi everyone, I just wanted to go through where we're at with our unit before we start again after Christmas. We've done a really large portion of our unit so far and we've got a last push to get through. And so I want to go through it and make sure we're all clear on where we're at and what we need to be doing. So, before Christmas, we were working on the idea generation section of our brief, and this was about exploring what we thought about our personal theme, what direction we were taking it in, the trends that we were going to link to, and choosing a contextual influence that was going to be reflected in our designs. And so that is all research based. There was some idea generation, some sketches, people created mind maps and mood boards. We created really clear sheets of what our contextual influences were. We now need to take that and use all that information to design from. So if we have a look at the brief, the first section that we did from September onwards was about learning skills, understanding what trends were, how they were predicted, and how they applied to fashion design. This was all in your influences file, which we completed, I think it was October half term, maybe a bit later. And those criteria were P1 and P2, which is about explaining how the fashion design industry works. We're now moving on to task 2. So step 1, which I've just highlighted here, was about research and idea generation. That was coming up with ideas, plans, thoughts about what you're going to design. This is all linked to P3, which I've highlighted in the brief, and that is to show that we can explore and interpret design trends and contextual influences, and that we can use those to produce designs. And so it's really important that we don't lose track of that research that we did. We need to make sure that all of our designs relate to at least one of the trends that we've researched, and that we've got a contextual influence for our design. P4 that we're focusing on now is to demonstrate an application of design development. So that's about us using all of those skills that we learned from September about working from technical drawings, doing the design development where we have an army of designs and we've changed little details on each one, using all of the skills to draping, working from photographs, working from basic shapes, to try and get the strongest design that we can that works for haute couture and that works for our theme. So we've got a range of tasks that we need to be doing in this now. On the brief, it's step 2, the design development step, but there are loads of things that we need to be doing in that, and I'm going to go through those now. So we should have already, this is the orange stuff on the sheet, we should have already generated ideas, done some research, sketches, put our thoughts down on paper, summarised what we're going to be looking at. We should have linked trends and we should have linked contextual influences. The blue tasks are going to be our current focus for the next few weeks, and this is before we do our final design, all the steps that we need to go from idea to final outcome. So we're going to be doing that now. This list I created just before Christmas, and it was a comparison between what was in the idea generation stage and what was in the design development stage. We're going to start working through that now, step by step, and mostly each of the things on the list will be a focus for each week. So the first thing that we need to do is start developing basic garment silhouettes, and that's step 1 for today. So these are our tasks and the things that we're going to focus on. So in the blue box, the first thing is to summarise our research so far. This is so that we can understand all of the things that we've researched and all the ideas that we've had and bring them together and edit them to make sure that we're including the key things that we need to in our designs. We're not just throwing everything at our designs, we're refining it and we're selecting the most important, the most interesting, the most useful things to put into our designs. And to do that, I want you to complete a worksheet. So I've created this nice little number which has got some questions that you need to ask yourself and complete. It doesn't matter whether you print this out and write it, or whether you just write out the questions and answer them, or you type it all out again. Whichever way you want to work is fine by me, but you need to have asked yourself these questions and included it in your sketchbook. So the first one is the theme and the direction. What is your theme? So was it comfort, practicality, or cheerfulness? And what has your idea been? What direction have you taken that in? How have you interpreted that theme for your own personal style, your own personal ideas? The second thing is, what are the key predicted trends that you've drawn upon, that you've researched? The third thing is, which aspects of these predicted trends are you going to incorporate? So it's not enough to just say, this is the predicted trend that I'm looking at. We need to really drill down and say which parts of this we're going to interpret, because we're not just going to take that whole trend and copy it and do a new design of it. We're going to take specific elements of it, specific parts of it, mix it with other ones and create our own new designs. So which aspects of the predicted trend are you going to incorporate? Is it a particular colour? Is it some textures? Is it a mood? Is it some shapes? What about it are you going to use? The next one is, what contextual influences are you drawing on? So we had that list of 5 at the beginning, remember? So things like environment, culture, social, politics. Which one of those are you drawing on? And we did a worksheet a few weeks ago where I worked through an example of how I would approach it, and we put down what was happening at the moment for each of these, and then we evaluated which ones of those ideas that we'd put down was most relevant to our work, and then we use that as our main contextual influence. So this is you summarising now which contextual influence you're drawing on. And the last thing is, how will these contextual influences be reflected in your garment design? So just like with trends, it's not enough to say, here's my contextual influence, it's the environment. We need to say, how are you going to put that influence into your work? How will it be seen? How will it be incorporated? It's not enough to just say it is. You need to prove that it is and tell me how it's going to happen. Okay? After you've completed those, I want us to do a visual summary of the details, the elements, the things that you've researched or the ideas that you've come up with, not just in terms of concepts, but in terms of visually how they're going to look in your design. So I've got a box for key things that I want you to think about. So you need to have a look at all of your research so far, look at your mood boards, look at any secondary research that you've done, any primary research, and extract the key things that you want to incorporate. So what are the key colours? Were there some colours from a trend? Are there some colours from some secondary research that you've done? Shapes and silhouettes, again, these might be trends, these might just be your ideas, they might be from a previous haute couture collection that you want to use and explore further. What are the textures and textile details? So it might be the case that when you start doing the next stage of design development, you start to create textiles that you design from, rather than creating a silhouette or working from a particular shape of garment. Design details, this is the biggest one. So these might be things that you definitely want to incorporate. So you might be thinking about doing loads of frills. You might be thinking about doing a particular style of collar, or some military details like epaulettes or particular types of brass buttons. These are all of the nitty-gritty fine details that you want to make sure you include, because they maybe make the design, they maybe make the link to your trend, they might be the thing that really explores protection for you. So what are the design details that you must and definitely need to include? So this is quite a chunky sheet that I need you to complete, but it's really important that we use it to summarise our findings so far. And this is almost the sheet that we're going to be working from. So when I'm talking to you one-to-one, I'll be saying, what are your key predicted trends? What are the things that you definitely need to include? And so we need to be able to summarise them. We need to be able to be sure of the direction that we're going in for our design, rather than being wishy-washy and just randomly designing loads of things that have got nothing to do with anything we've researched. We need to make sure we've got direct links to our research so far. Okay? So that sheet will probably take you most of the session. For the next part of the session, when you finish the sheet, I want you to focus on creating some basic garment shapes. These are just going to be rough hand drawings. They don't need to be technical drawings at this point. They're rough hand drawings of basic silhouettes and shapes that you think that will work for your ideas. So it might be, they might all be dresses. It might just be variations on dress shapes, and you might do one that's a great big bell shape, you might do one that's a trapeze, you might do one that's like a really narrow sheath dress. They're just basic silhouettes that you can think, does this link to my idea? Is this going to be something that I can add to? Is this something that I can work with to create an interesting design? So I want you to draw at least 6 different garment shapes and silhouettes, and then I'd like you to review each garment shape, and I've put a list of questions here. Oops, don't know what I've done there. A list of questions that I'd like you to think about when you review each of these designs. So, why does it meet my research and ideas? Is it something that I could work from? Is it a blank canvas? Can I add details to this? Or is it already like a fully developed design? Is it interesting enough? Is it something that has potential? Does it fit the aesthetics of my ideas and trend research? Is it a completely kind of modern, clean silhouette when all of my research was about fussy details and looking at tradition? Because if so, I maybe need to rethink the basic silhouette that I'm starting from. Is it suitable for haute couture? So, is this something that's quite a high street design? Is it something that could be interpreted with different textures to make it haute couture? We need to be thinking about who we're designing for here, not just our theme. So, we're going to have at the end of the session a range of things that are starting points for our design. And I've got a summary here for you. So in your blue box on this slide, here are the things that we need to put in your sketchbook this week. A completed idea generation review worksheet, sketches of basic garment shapes and your initial ideas, annotated review of each of your sketches. So this is our starting point to get our basis for the rest of our design. Next week, which is week 17, I've highlighted it here. Oops, I can't use my mouse today. We're going to start applying the design skills that we did in September to this silhouette. So we're going to do some draping, working from images, working from shapes, working from that sheet that you've just filled in to think about the details that we want to put in and drawing them on, seeing how they look, seeing what ideas we have. Maybe our idea might change slightly, but this is more of an exploratory session. Week 18, after that, we're going to be selecting the strongest design elements that you've done so far and applying them to your silhouette. And that's where we're going to start getting into the formal design development. So we're going to make a technical drawing, a flat working drawing of your shape, then start doing those tiny, tiny tweaks. And so we've got 2 weeks of summarising, getting everything together, putting all of our ducks in a row before we start doing the formal design development. Okay?